performances for its servicemen. One incident involved the youngest member of the dance troupe singing the popular song, "Don't Fence Me In," a tune made popular by Roy Rogers and later Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters. Johnston elaborated, "The 5-year-old Chamorro girl shook a saucy finger at the boys and charmed them with her dimpled cheek and smiling rosebud mouth. The men loved her." "May I pick her up?" asked a boy after the show. "It's all right, isn't it, dear?" Agata asked the young girl in a manner to encourage an affirmative reply. Though Johnston encourages an affirmative reply, the fact that she does so in the form of a question already suggests that for Guam's godmother of education and staunch patriot, the terms of engagement with the U.S. military were already beginning to be questioned, even as the war still raged on. This ambivalence was also evident in the immediate post-war years. For my talk this evening, I'd like to rethink the terms of engagement that underwrite discussion and debate around the impending military growth here. By terms of engagement, I mean the conventional understandings of what is indigenous Chamorro and what is American, but also the supposedly common sense ideas about the relationship of the military to Chamorros, some of which featured the military's ideas of its pre-World War II rules of engagement in dealing with Chamorros as a result of having to administer them while also running a polling station here in Guam. Drawing from my research and readings in critical scholarship on the relations between white American Navy wives and Chamorro women, I will argue that Patera, the nurse midwives' narratives and their oral histories, and those of the Chamorro teacher Agata Johnston, can help us to think through assumptions about the categories Chamorro or indigenous and America or modernity. I will begin fairly briefly with the Patera, since that story may already be a little bit more familiar to you, to some of you, that is. I did a master's thesis on the Patera for the Micronesian Studies program when I was here. In favor of spending more time offering a rereading of Johnston's patriotism as my way of critically re-examining the terms that underwrite the category Chamorro and the category modern, which, although is readily equated with America in Guam, is not necessarily reducible or equivalent to America. My aim is to show how, in the Patera stories of their pre-war years and in Agata Johnston's pre- and post-war years, the discourses of Chamorro loyalty and patriotism to America is much more complicated than a case of being brainwashed into uncritical acceptance of America. Furthermore, this complication, evident in explicitly ambivalent moments, can also, in certain conditions of awareness, yield to explicitly defiant stances towards the military in particular, and American colonialism more generally, even if the military and American colonialism have provided important materiality and opportunity for specifically Chamorro notions of progress and development. Ultimately, I conclude that Chamorros themselves need to come to terms with these terms, particularly when afforded with the means, such as today, to look back in our recent history and see the real consequences of what has transpired in the wake of World War II and its changing aftermath, which we are facing today in the eve of the return of the Marines to Guam. Scholars of Guam and Chamorro history have for over 2 decades now been complicating our understanding of U.S. colonialism in Guam that began in 1899 with the arrival of the first naval administration under Governor Richard Leary. Influenced by broader critical historiography elsewhere, scholars have shown how the American project of, quote, benevolent assimilation in Guam, firmly established through the terms of public health, public works, and public education, and the instruction of English, the 3 pillars of what the Navy dubbed the long road to rehabilitation, was anything but simply benevolent. More recent critical scholarship has also shown that colonialism clearly worked and continues to work differentially, unevenly in Guam, where some sectors profit and gain and others lose out. An important dimension of recent scholarship attends to how colonialism, Americanization, and modernization have also been highly engendered and even sexualized. In her analysis of U.S. naval health policies in Guam during the first half of the 20th century, for instance, Anna Torrey writes that in its emasculation of the island, the Navy rendered Chamorro men absent as a result of widespread epidemic and warfare, and asserted power and fecundity over the Chamorro women as bearers of the race. This emptying and feminization of the landscape can best be seen in this July 1928 advertisement by the Guam Chamber of Commerce in the Guam Recorder entitled, "Wanted, American Farmers for Guam," which reads, "There are thousands of acres of virgin government land laying waste on this island that should be working for the needs of the world. Governor Shapley is in favor of American farmers coming to Guam with the hope that their modern methods will be of assistance and a good example to the inhabitants. Here is an opportunity for reputable and experienced farmers who wish to settle on this island of Edenic virginity, where it is summer all winter and the planting season is every month of the year. Particulars concerning general information, the possibilities of securing land and growing coffee, sugar, cocoa, coconuts, pineapples, oranges, lemons, limes, bananas, and all the tropical fruits and vegetables, including most of the garden vegetables you're familiar with, will be sent to interested parties." The reference to virgin and Edenic virginity implies that Guam is female in need of an experienced or seasoned white American male propagation for the good of the world. In such narratives of depopulation as a result of 300 years of Spanish, quote-unquote, misrule and rehabilitation by a particular white male colonial order, Chamorro women with certain abilities, disabilities, and adaptabilities came under different forms of scrutiny. For the Navy, the most obvious progenitors of the Chamorro race were Chamorro mothers, traditional female folk healers, the Suruhana, and the midwives, the Patera. The U.S. Navy targeted the Patera, many of whom doubled as Suruhana, relying on Chamorro medicine, massage, and other traditional practices to treat women at different life cycles, because their hands were directly responsible for delivering the body, literally and discursively. One by one, Navy governors sought ways to regulate the Patera, the older lay midwives who had been practicing before the Navy arrived, and who, as one Navy governor claimed, were being, quote-unquote, incapacitated by age. They said this all the while recruiting and training the younger Patera as nurse wives, precisely to incapacitate or render obsolete their older predecessors. Chamorro women were also conscripted as teachers into the U.S. Navy's civilizing project. But as with the Patera, I'll return to show how these women weren't simply passive individuals being led around or brainwashed. It is also important to know, and this is the focus of my doctoral research, that such Chamorro women, like nurses and teachers, also reworked the terms of U.S. military colonialism vis-a-vis the work of white middle-class women who, as Navy wives, accompanied their husbands on Guam. One important white woman Navy wife was Susan Dyer, who established the first hospital for Chamorro women and children in 1905, which led to the creation of a nursing school and later the increased enrollment of Chamorro nurses into the Navy's curriculum. Another was the work of Helen Paul, a teacher at the Guam Normal School who was said to have designed the Guam flag. Although this claim has been contested by many who assert that a Chamorro man, Francisco Feja, deserves the honor. Naval narratives, as well as earlier histories of Guam, portrayed Chamorro women like the Patera, like the Chamorro teachers, as simply modernized and assimilated. Yet oral histories and unpublished writings of Chamorro women reveal that in their